All right, let's start this kickoff meeting right here, right now. Let's not waste any time, as Lua has and Bing have lots of things to tell us. Can everybody see my presentation?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Brief introduction. I'm Antonio Nardella, community manager at the IOTA Foundation. I use the pronouns he, him. You might know me for the IOTA Experience Team initiatives that are also here an effort between all departments of the IOTA Foundation and some other projects I have been working on. The agenda is pretty simple. We're going to kick off right now with experience what the experience teams are, what they entail, and then we are going to have an introduction to the IOTA Permanode X team by Luai and the goals that we propose, and then the questions and answers. Of course, everything is inside the IOTA Experience team. This session is going to be recorded and will be shared on different platforms. So the questions, you can write them in the chat if you do not want your voice to be heard, or and we will read them out loud. Luai will also share a link where you can insert your questions. So let's start from the beginning and let's introduce the experience teams. As an overview, we have already really engaged community members that are bringing the IOTA vision forward. They are helping us by writing issues in GitLab, by reading our documentation and figuring out if we have a typo or if a guide does not work anymore, and or creating tools, visualizers. I mean, the Hornet project was a community effort at the beginning. So you're already participating in the IOTA vision, and the IOTA experience teams are a way for us to give you a platform to speak as a community. So speak as a voice for the community. So tell us what is not working for you. Tell us if the tools that you're using do not work, and maybe you confront yourself with other community members. And by joining the IOTA X teams, you have really a front row possibility to raise your hand and say, hey, look, people, we should do something about this. On the other hand, it's also important to have a platform where you can work alongside IOTA Foundation members. So we have these kickoff meetings, of course, where we introduce our X teams. And then we have bi-weekly or every 3 weeks, we have a meeting with the IOTA Foundation member that is actively participating in the experience team, where you can share feedback, where you can exchange ideas, where you can share the work that you're doing and collect feedback from our side. Because sometimes, I mean, of course, you have Discord, you have GitHub, where you can already communicate in a asynchronous mode, but sometimes it's really helpful to talk with the people vis-a-vis, or to have a possibility to express your ideas in words instead of writing in voice, instead of writing them down. Of course, you have also the possibility to guide the development processes. So the IOTA X teams, let's say, are started at different moments of different projects. So, for example, we might invite you at a really research stage of a project, or maybe in an alpha stage where everything can change, or later on in a beta stage where everything is more or less defined. And we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and figure out how to fix bugs or to do benchmarks. It really depends on the project itself. And so you have really the possibility to join and to bring your personal use case, or the use cases from a business you really know really well. And then there you have the possibility to shape the development process with us together. And of course, as many are already submitting open source contributions, here you have the possibility to do it under this this idea, this group that we call IOTA Experience Teams. And as you will see later on, this is also a possibility for you to grow in reputation around the tools that you're using, and also about a reputation around the contributions that you brought to the IOTA Vision. Really quick, we have already 5 initiatives. So we started with the IOTA Streams. That's the last one in the slide. And then we started the Go Shimmer initiative, the B initiative. Last week, we kicked off the IOTA Libraries initiative. And this is the IOTA Permanode initiative. So as you can see, there are many initiatives where you can take part. So you can decide if you want to learn more Rust, and then you would like to see the B framework or learn more about that. Or you're using the IOTA libraries already and would like to support with your contribution that initiative even more, you can join that one. You can join more than one initiative, of course, depending on how much time you have at your disposal. How does this contribution look like? Well, this is not let's say it's not a playbook, so this is a really rough framework around which we are moving ourselves. So we have this initial phase where we define goals. So as you can see, and as you might have seen in other initiatives, we have an IOTA Foundation member that proposes goals depending on the status and on the phase of the project. And then you yourself can also propose own goals. So as we define them, community proposals or community goals, where you say, all right, my skills are around, let's say, graphic design, or for me, it's really, my skills are into taking really complex concepts and putting them in some really easy to understand infographics or mind maps or a blog post, or even I like to write documentation, or I like to test things out, or to install things and break them, for example. All these are contributions that you can have, and you can set your own goals. So it's not that we tell you what to do, it's that we propose these goals, so that if you're undecided and at what to work at, you can contribute at our goals. And of course, if you have, for example, a really clear idea of what you want to do around the IOTA project, let's say for the Permanodes, you have a really clear idea about how you want to work on them, and maybe, let's say, you want to see if it's possible to have some kind of selective cache of a Permanode on your mobile phone, or really something that I am just coming with some ideas, crazy ideas in my head, and you want to do that, and do that in the or during the IOTA X-Team initiative, you are absolutely welcome. So there's the possibility where you vote, so you can decide and let others know on what initiatives you would really love to work on. And then we continue with the next phase that I call the phase where you do your magic. So where really you let your skills shine and come into play and show us what you're capable of. Of course, it's between the creative phase and the feedback rounds, it's a loop. So it goes round, and you have the possibility to work at your own pace, to collaborate with other people, to define specifications or discuss proposals. So you really have time to show and to use your creativity around and your skills. And then you have feedback rounds where you share your ideas with the X teams, where you publish your contributions in the end. And all this is, again, a really loose framework. We don't want to make it too strict, because, again, it's open source contribution. People might have 1 hour per week to contribute to the project. Others might have, I don't know, maybe 2 days, maybe the weekend to dedicate to the IOTA initiative. So it's not something that we are imposing. And we really want to keep this framework loose enough to make it possible for everyone to contribute. Let's have a look at what such contributions look like. I wanted to take here the first X theme that we launched. That was the IOTA Streams initiative. And as you can see, the focus is on two goals here, because these are two community initiatives. One is by Gallegogt or Rayloy, and the other is by Alebuzer. So they proposed two goals, and they are working on these goals at their own pace and contributing to them and helping others to have to experience IOTA better. Better really means to have the possibility to understand the IOTA, to understand the projects, to integrate them in their business, to integrate them in their proof of concepts, and really have here an easier experience all around IOTA. And when I say all around, it's really all around. It's not only developing, it's not only writing code, but it's really the whole experience around it. And of course, with contribution comes reputation. And here we have Alebuzer in a IEN workshop, so the IOTA Evangelist Network workshop, where he explained the differences starting from MAM, from masked authenticated messaging, and arriving to IOTA Streams. And so as he already digged deeply into the IOTA Streams project, and he already knew MAM, he really had the possibility to show off what the differences are, and to build his reputation around this project, for example. And with reputation and regarding reputation around the IOTA X themes, we have this open proposal that is already in a really pre-alpha stage, where we are trying to find, let's say, a tool to measure these contributions and to give our contributors hard data where they can show off the contributions that they do to the IOTA projects in the IOTA Experience initiatives, where they have the possibility to measure their contributions. And these measurements, we are publishing them to a really simple graph, because this is the tool. This is an open source tool that's called cred. They use a PageRank like algorithm, the PageRank from the big G. And they're trying now to figure out how to make open source contributions self-sustainable, how to understand and measure the importance of contributions, and how to, of course, they have built a token system around it. And so they will mint tokens, and these tokens, you can cash them out, or let's say bet your tokens on the initiatives, or invest them in the initiatives, so that the people working on these initiatives might be rewarded by this, and you get rewards for putting your energy in, your trust, and your time that has been transformed into tokens in this initiative to make it grow. So it's a really interesting concept. Have a look at the proposal, have a look at the dashboard. So every time you comment on our issues on GitHub, or you participate by creating new issues, and then in the future, as soon as this tool is ready, we will integrate it in Discord, and we will maybe also open a forum like IOTA Cafe for the X teams, and all these contributions will help build your reputation around this. And we are thinking about also, of course, this is a proposal. For example, for the ecosystem webpage to create badges. So the more you contributed to a project, let's say IOTA Permanode, you get the badge as an expert in the Permanode project. And this might even help. The idea around this is really to help you build some sort of, let's say, career around IOTA, but take this with gloves. So it's nothing really defined. It's ways that we are trying to find out on how to help you not only experience the IOTA vision, but really build something around it, and also to have a personal advantage over others that may just in the end get to the project. Of course, when we talk about IOTA X Teams, we have also community. This is, for example, an interview by Einfach IOTA, where they interviewed two community members. Here we have Reloy or Reloy. I don't know if it has to be read in French. And as you can see, also around the IOTA X Teams, as more people contribute and people get aware and are aware of what you're doing, we try to get the word out around all these contributions. So let's close this. Let's close the points around it. So X Teams are really all around the IOTA projects and the possibility to contribute and to show off your contributions, let's say, really summed up. And as I love pop cultures, I define this as the way to contribute even more and to show that the community around IOTA is really strong, as you are in the end IOTA. I mean, you know what IOTA is useful for in your use case. We can imagine it. We are mainly biased around what we already know, and we might miss some parts. And here is where the community and you as contributors have really the possibility to show and open up the vision and enlarge it and show what and how our projects can really be used. So if you are looking for more information, there is this GitHub repository. That's iota-community/IOTA-experience-team. And of course, join us on Discord, discord.iota.org. And if you're interested in one or the other X team or initiative, just get in touch. I will add you to the teams. And again, you can join every team if you want to, or just specific teams. All right. Next up is Luai and Bing with their presentation about the IOTA Permanode. So I will now leave the stage and the word to Luai and Bing.
Yeah, thank you, Antonio, for taking the time. This was really helpful especially for me and Bing, because we are new to X team, as almost everyone here. So thank you. Okay, I will start by sharing my screen. Here. Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. We are Chronica developer, and I am Luai, leading the Chronica development cycle. And Bing is also here with us today. So hi, Bing. Yeah.
Hey, Luai.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, I'm Bing.
Yeah. So actually, before we start, I would like to highlight what we are going to tackle in this presentation, starting with an overview about Permanode and market in general, then diving into some of the design decisions that made the Chronica a valuable and exciting product. So then we will give a summary about the creds and the current state of Chronica and any future work. Finally, we will have a Q&A section where anybody will be able to ask questions, and hopefully we will answer them. So hopefully we aim by the end of the presentation, we would like you to see the potential of this project, not just within IOTA space. Therefore, when you contribute to this project, you know that you are contributing to DLT space in general, and most importantly, RAS ecosystem. So this project is beyond IOTA scope. So now let us get started with Bing. He will give us a glance about the market forecast. Please, Bing.
Okay, thank you, Luwei. Hi everyone, I'm Bing. I'm also the Chronicle developer. So in the next 3 slides, I would like to show you the market size and some predictions for the markets that the Chronicle may help. So this figure shows the number of machine-to-machine connections from 2018 to 2023. And it is reported in the Cisco white paper this year. As you know, Cisco every year will publish a white paper to predict the market size in the near future and also summarize the markets in the past few years. So as you can see in this figure, it is predicted that there will be about 19 compound annual growth rate in the next few years. Also, the report shows that by 2023, half of the global connections will be machine-to-machine connections. And among this huge amount of connected devices, no doubt that there will be also a huge amount of data transmitted. So a question is raised that how can we get benefits from this data and how can we use them? So as we discussed, there are so many data transmitted currently and more transmitted data in the future. So one of the related market is the big data as a service. And the market size is predicted to be increased steadily in the future. So how do we store and access this huge amount of data efficiently and gain profits from them? Also, can we run applications and can we run analytics tools for this data asynchronously by using reliable framework? So to solve these problems, IOTA's solution is Chronicle. And actually, Luwei already released the Chronicle in Elixir last year. And the main focus of the Elixir Chronicle is for efficient IOTA transaction storing and access with databases. In addition to this functionality, actually in our new released Chronicle Alpha, we developed the Chronicle in Rust and also make it be a framework to support different distributed ledger technologies. So we also designed the Chronicle Rust as a framework with multiple useful creds. And the creds will be presented in details next by Luwei. Also, the framework can be integrated with different asynchronous applications. Sorry, yes, this slide. So in our Chronicle Rust, the framework can be integrated with different asynchronous applications using our runtime. Also, you can run Chronicle simultaneously with your different applications. And the last point is that we also enhance the data model so as to boost the efficiency of data lookup in the database. So in the next slides, we will give more details about the Chronicle framework.
Yeah, thank you, Bing, so much for this. This is really impressive. I am really excited for the market and see how this will evolve in the near future. So I will start by talking a little bit about an overview about Chronica. So as everyone knows, Chronica started as a distributed fault tolerance Permanode that scale out and up to store the full history of the tangle. So, but it evolved to a framework that provides a complex network infrastructure which can be extended with various functionality through a multiplex networks by building microservices for each layer that can communicate with public and private data sets under different policy defined by the users. So here is the layer integration. As everyone knows, in the software architecture, we have two main layers. We have the data layer, that's where the data is being stored, and we have the application layer. And those layers should have the ability to be interconnected somehow, and this is what Chronica is providing. So you can take a look at this as a top view of Chronica system. it's a simple way to integrate a different layer and even complex layer to be interconnected and communicate with each other. In this slide, it's the top view of what we are going to tackle in this presentation. So I will just skip this one. Okay. So as being mentioned, we have a problem that we want to solve. So we produce a lot of data, and Tangle itself is meant to act as a protocol for the data flow from all the IoT devices around the world. Now imagine the data flowing from the left side, which is from all IoT devices, and we want to store it somehow in a database. But we cannot store this in one data or in one node. So what we can do, a clustered approach. So what does that mean? We need a distributed database. It's a hard requirement. So we cannot store all the data in one node. We need a scalable data layer that can scale in all directions. So what I mean by this, actually what I mean by this is we need a database that can scale in all directions, in and out, but without downtime for the application layer, despite the topology change for the application itself or for the database. So if you add a new node to the database or remove a new node, you should be able to have the ability to reflect this in the application layer. And also without affecting the microservices that are being already developed, already been running by the serving by the application. Okay. So I will explain how we are going to provide this. So mainly in the database space, we have shared architecture and shared nothing architecture. In shared design, all the data is shared by everyone. So it needs looks to sync the data across operations. That's why it's not scalable. While in shared nothing design, each node, each thread in that node actually own a subset of data and control over corresponding query to the data that, and this is what enables this design to have a limited scalability. So as a summary, the shared nothing architecture, each node owns a subset of data. And the best candidate with this design is ScyllaDB. It's founded by Avi, who is known for creating kernel virtual machine key event project. And it's not just a key value store. It's built with C# C++ framework, which is known for high performance C++ application. And it is using LCMM-based storage, which is known for high write throughput. And it's one of its kind for algorithmic sharding with shared awareness feature. Finally, it supports Cassandra query language binary protocol, which is known for async stream support. And that's why ScyllaDB calls itself a drop-in replacement for Cassandra database. And it provides a lot more. It provides a flexible data model, unlike key value store. So we have a lot of query advantage over any other database. So what are the motivation behind this project? We started, as I said, we want unlimited Tangle storage. And this is the main motivation. And then we wanted to have a layer to process the data like financial and identity data. And we ended up, we need a way for efficient DLT application to be able to send the data, because most of the application, they don't interact with one DLT service. So they have access to more than one DLT application. So they want to have access to as much as possible for the DLT. As well, they already have a stateful and complex state that they want to handle in their own data set. So in order to provide a query as service from the application. Okay, so what we have been doing in the recent months, actually we started by the database ScyllaDB integration, and then we designed it and developed Chronica. We have spent a lot of time on the data model. Basically, it's a tree of table, which we are going to talk about in the next slides. The main table is the transaction table. which holds a transaction. Each row it represents a transaction, and then we have the H table. We have the data table. Both of them are secondary index table. Now we have the CLAT data layer. It's important to understand. In order to understand Chronica, you have to have an idea about how CLAT DB actually work under the hood. So I will explain this in this slide. So this is the top view of CLAT data layer. We have connection peer shared, and each shared control a subset range of data and their corresponding query we mentioned it earlier. So Scylla node is basically a group of shards. In Scylla, you can add or remove nodes as you wish on the fly during the runtime. So this will not affect the application and should not affect the application. And the most interesting part about ScyllaDB, unlike other database, it supports all the nodes participate to the network. So all the nodes, all the replica provide a read-write query operation for the application layer. Now the data model. As I mentioned, we have the transaction table, which is the single source of truth. Basically, you can think of it as if you want to have a consensus on the data you have in your database, you should treat this table as your single source of truth. Each table represents a transaction, which you can query it using a transaction hash, using the partition key. So to provide an efficient lookup query using by the hash. Yes, and this is also the interesting table. It's an H table, acts as a secondary index table to enable lookup by other transaction relation like address, trunk, bundle. So as I said, the partition key identify which Scylla shards on the data. So all the rows that have the same partition key, and here in this slide, it's a vertex. So they will be stored sequentially in the same storage disk as partition. For instance, this enables us to do lookup for all the value transaction for a given address by using address itself as a vertex. But what's about the transactions that belong to zero value address? We know anyone can spam the tangle using any zero value address. And this leads to millions of transactions that belong to the same zero value address. So if you stored all of them in H table as output, then our data layer probably will be out of space because all the row for this address is the same, is located, is stored in the same Scylla shared disk. And this disk has a limitation. So it will go, eventually it will go out of space. So how to solve this? That's why we designed the hint row. As you might see in the third row, we have the hint row, which I will explain in the next table. So any address can have only, I will summarize this table. So any address can only have value transaction and one hit row, even if it had millions of zero value address. And to use the hint, I will explain the data table. So data table, which also act as a secondary index, but within a given month. So in order to do point query, you have to provide the year and the month along the address or the tag. So this enables an efficient lookup, but as a time series lookup. So the user is required to provide the year and the month. And this somehow will enable us to bound the data that belong to a given address and happen at a given time range within a given month to prevent an out of space and force an even distribution for the data for a given spam address or tag. Because as everyone, a tag or address can have millions of an transaction. So that's the main point of data table. Okay. So Chronica framework. This is the interesting part. So here I would like to introduce Chronica in the top layer. So think of it as the whole application layer that are implemented within the user space using actor model. Fundamentally, all the application layer are the same, as they use async await Rust abstraction to form the actors. So as they wish. So will be executed using Rust runtime, for example, Right now, Tokyo is being used. So what I can summarize from this is each app is a supervision tree, which is implemented by the user to provide a specific microservice. So we, Chronica developer, implemented some of the application, which we are going to talk about in the next slides. So the main one, it's a framework. So this is the framework cred that is common by all the creds that we already implement. So the goal of this cred is to provide the shared methods in Chronicle Framework, to provide the macros that should be implemented by other application in order to be implemented under Chronicle Framework. But the good thing here is it uses pure Rust implementation, so there is no abstraction at all. It only uses the macros to enable an efficient pure Rust max compatibility. And also we have the launcher. So the goal of the launcher is to launch the application in order you require and have a predefined restart strategy, like 1-for-1. So, but basically at the end, the launcher is just a middleman actor between the application themselves and the dashboard. For example, let us say the dashboard admin want to shut down an application, or maybe just inner service in that application. So the launcher will enable this, and it's up to community, up to you guys to enhance this, and also hopefully back to me by feedback to improve this and make it a unified, hopefully unified framework for the Rust community. So we have the storage crates. So this was the first crate that we implemented using Chronicle Framework. It's basically an integration of the database and application. It provides a connection to ScyllaDB, as we mentioned earlier. So each connection will be established by the storage application using the actors and application layer. And it will enable the application to handle the full cycle of query, from initiating the query till handling the response of the query. We also spent time on designing the ring design, which is enable us to have the shared awareness feature, which what makes Chronica a unique application. It's not just a connection pool. So you can think as this application as a connection pool, but basically the ring itself provide a smart router mechanism, which enables the query to be sent to the specific shard, Scylla shard that's on a given query. So if you have if you have thousands of Scylla shards in your cluster, using the ring, you will be able to send the query to the specific one that's on your transaction or your a group of address, or that should handle and control the queries that you are sending. So this will make the latency way less than others. So because you will only need one RPC API call to ScyllaDB, and we already have this as a connection, which I will explain in the next slide. So we have the storage architecture. So under the hood, this is how it looks. So as I mentioned, we have the connection, and this stage it handles the connection, and we have the worker. So the worker can coexist in any application. So they are not limited to the storage applications. They can exist in any application out scope of the storage application. But the stage itself, it does exist, and it's running under the storage tree. So what does that mean? We have this receiver, which handles the connection, income, which is the connection receive end, and we have the sender, which handles the sending the query. But we have also the reporter. So the reporter acts as a middleman between the receiver and the sender and the worker. The worker will send the query using the ring to the reporter, and the reporter will assign a stream ID using Cassandra SQL protocol specification. And once it assigns the stream ID, it will just push this to the receiver, to the sender, and the sender will send it to the Scylla socket, and eventually the receiver will receive the response. But one important thing here is, as I mentioned, because this is an async stream support, that means if you send a response, if you send a request 1 and a request 2, that doesn't mean that you are going to get the response 1 and response 2 in the same order. No, that means you are probably going to receive them and order it. So you might receive the response 2 before you get to receive the response 1 for your first request. So that's the main idea behind this architecture. Actually, we only implemented in Rust, we only implemented the reporter and the receiver sender. We didn't yet implement the patcher and the allocate patcher because those are planned for optimization phase. So this is the second use case for our Chronica. Basically, it's an application that provides the IOTA Reference API that everyone knows. Mainly for now, we only provide get writes, which enable you guys to look up for transaction by transaction hash. And also we provide a find transaction, which is similar to the current IOTA reference, with exception that we provide a hint support, which I will demonstrate later. So the hint actually, as I spoke, you need to provide the month and the year. So this means you have to provide the address, month, and the year, and it will support paging, because a given zero value address might have a million of transactions, and we cannot retain all of those in one single API. And in order to do this, we support paging. That means the user will send a query and will get a paging state that can be used in future queries, in future API, to proceed from where it left. So this is the interesting part about Chronica. The third application is the broker application. It provides the basic functionality for ZMQ subscription and handling. It just connects with the ZMQ node and provide the feed source to Chronica. For now, we only provide the importer functionality for the dumps as well as the ZMQ, but we are planning to also work on the solidifier in the future release. And actually, this is an interesting one because if you don't provide this, like your database, it will not be in sync and it will not be solid. So right now we have a limitation in this application. Your database or your tangled data, it will not be solid unless we implement the solidifier, which will be implemented in future release. So this is one of the limitations that you guys should consider before jumping into Chronica. As everyone know, definitely like your Chronica network will have a network problem. So your subscription to the ZMQ node, you will lose the connection and you will lose transaction. That means you will lose this kind of transaction and you will not be able to solidify the transaction in the meantime. But we are going to work on this as soon as we release the alpha release. Okay, so this SQL cred, actually it's a Cassandra query language protocol. You can think of it as a Cassandra driver, which only act as a static for encoding and decoding method. It's we already have like a Cassandra CDR's driver, but that driver is meant for a general purpose application, while we implemented a really advanced one that I think one of its kind. It take the advantage of Rust ecosystem and enable a really advanced use cases to support a user-defined types with only one heap allocation per query. So this really it's way faster than other available drivers. And it also support an easy integration with Chronica application. So you can easily use this use crates outside of this scope. So you can use it with other applications that you are planning to use to support ScyllaDB or Cassandra. So this is the interesting part. You can think of it as a standalone project. That's if you like Cassandra or use Cassandra or ScyllaDB, then I think this scope will be interesting for you guys to contribute on. Yeah, so as everyone know, Chronica is a part of P. So both are written in Rust. Right now, we only leverage some of the B crates for IOTA protocol implementation, tries conversion, and like from integer to tries. But eventually, we are planning to use solidifier implementation from B crates and be implemented, modified to Chronica. So that's why we are waiting till big tangle gets more mature and implemented as soon as possible in broker application. As well, any application in Chronica is free to integrate with B. So they can easily use B within any application layer. We have, so we have the roadmap right now. We are working on the alpha release. As everyone know, almost everything is ready. We only have to finalize the documentation. As well, we are working on Chronica as a binary application, because what I will demonstrate right now in the demo after the next slide, you will notice like right now we have Chronica as a framework, but we are planning to make it a user-friendly and be used as a CLI application. And we are also planning to have the dashboard. So yeah, so the dashboard is the interesting part, because as I mentioned, we have the launcher and we have also the dashboard. The launcher acts as a middleman between the dashboard and the application. So the dashboard is meant as from management perspective. So the user will be able to manage and shut down or resume or do anything to any apps using the dashboard. So right now we only have the backend, but we are planning to have the UI by the end of the Q3, probably. And as I mentioned about the broker application, it's not yet ready. It does work, like it provides the ZMQ, but it will be like production deployment and enable like solid synced tangle by hopefully by the end of this year. And we will be able to test it and confirm everything is working. So what we want from you guys is to collect feedbacks, as well apply them to any future release. So we encourage you guys to send us as many as possible as feedbacks, and even to implement them in the future release. So I will just start by demonstrating a little of demo about Chronica. Yeah. So after you clone the Chronica, I will imagine like you have Chronica cloned in your local. Then you have to go to the examples and then try to run Chronica. Actually, before I run, you should have a ScyllaDB cluster running in place. So you can use the Docker in order to make sure you already have ScyllaDB running in a place. So I will just make sure. I think I already have it running, so I will not do anything. So just make sure you already have it in a place. So now I will just run the Chronica as the Chronica example, which is the broker one that is going to subscribe to the ZMQ node and use it as a feed source. Sorry, we have a little of warning, because I just did a little of modification, so we wasn't able to clean those. So right now it's just compiling. I will like to give an overview about this. So as you mentioned, you might notice here, those only for debugging for now. It just initiated the connection peer C/shared and added the node to the dashboard. So now it can control everything under the supervision tree. And it built the ring. This ring, as I mentioned, it enables any application like the storage application, API application, or a broker, or your application to use the ring in the global scope to send the query. So right now it's supposed to have everything in place. Okay, let us try the 2. Let me. Yeah. Placing the transaction hash. Actually, we should also. So right now we are using in our example, we are using this address and this port and this endpoint for the API. We have this. I think I already. Okay. So as everyone noticed, we successfully been enabled to send the query for the get threads API and receive the threads in the response. So I think something also interesting to demonstrate is the tag. Or let us try with the address. Tag, sorry. As I mentioned, we should also provide the year. So I will imagine. And then we have to provide the months. It's going to be, yeah, so. And now, hence, we have the find. Yeah, so this is interesting. Yeah, so. Sorry. Okay, so as you might notice, we've been able to retrieve the transaction for this tag, which is this one. So doesn't have, we need something like that, have a lot of transaction. I think you can try it on your own to, so that's the idea of the hint, you just have to provide the tag and the year, months, or you have to provide the address. And something we are going to work on is the ability to provide both tag and address. So we are going to support this. This way, you don't have to do any intersection. It's going to be implemented at the data model itself. So we will be able to retrieve all the transactions that have the same tag and address that occur in the specific year and months. So this is the basic idea of Chronica. Yeah. So, well, like actually, we need like your help, guys. And we have some goals that we are aiming to, and hopefully achieve together. we want to have a proof of correctness, enforcing the design by contract, not just for the application. We want to enforce the contract design for all the function, all the methods, everything in the Chronica project. We wanted to have a contract design to make sure, because this is an enterprise, it will be used by enterprise application sector. So we want to make sure everything is in a place and have the correctness. So this, I think you guys will be able to also work on unit test and have design by contract as documentation or comments on top of each function or method. And we want also to do a lot of tests and heavy tests, because as everyone knows, anything under an overload might have different behavior. So we already did a lot. I am sure like everything is being implemented as correct as possible. But we hope like you also to help us using and do a lot of tests, and as well to have feedbacks. And you can also help us with the benchmarking. Just do some benchmarking to find some maybe some areas that we oversight, so we will be able to optimize this specific part, which you will be able to figure. And we want also to share your experience about Chronica in general, because we want to make it as much as user-friendly as possible. So this will be really helpful. And we hope also to help us with the documentation, and also develop a new user cases. So as I mentioned, because it's scalable and you can extend it with other DLT application, so it will be interesting to see other application beyond the current one. So I believe you will be able to extend this or even implement some really advanced API like Sparkle. If anyone heard about it, it's for RDF, Resource Description Framework, which will enable like a graph traverse query language. I think this kind of use cases which excite me most, because it will enable like it will make the Tangle itself a really searchable, queryable, using the famous graph query language. So this, I think this will be interesting. And we want you to also help us to suggest as many as possible features, so we will be able to implement. Okay, I think now it's the time to have the question. Sorry, this was a bit long. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Luai and Bing, for this presentation. Absolutely insightful. And of course, at what stage can we define this project right now?
Yeah, you can define it right now at alpha.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we are going to finish it by the end of the week. So we will have the block announcement probably by the end of the week, once we have everything in place.
Mm-hmm.
And but we are aiming to have the like production deployment sector to implement like to implement Sila, and to implement Chronica once we hit the beta. So right now, I can like ensure like everything is working, but we cannot guarantee because it's just an alpha and we are just releasing this. So what we want to do as many tests as possible to just ensure to hit the beta as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. So this also means that the X team members of the community has really the possibility to help you out to shape the Permanode, the Chronicle product even more.
Yes, and even have decision impact on how the Chronica will be designed. So we are willing to hear anything from the community, even suggest something that will break some fundamental change for the better of future.
All right, awesome. Then I read some questions now from the chat. So, and then I leave you the space. Bing, would you like to add something before I start with the questions?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we can start questions currently.
Yes, thank you, Bing. Please go ahead.
All right. So why? One question is why ShielaDB? Its free version is limited to 5 nodes. This is one question here.
Yeah, just let me see. Yeah, so actually, it's not limited to 5 nodes. Actually, what it's limited to 5 nodes is the manager, ShielaDB manager. It's limited to 5 nodes. So that's what we are going to provide in ShielaDB in Chronica dashboard. So you will have access to ShielaDB manager, but ShielaDB manager will only provide the manager for the enterprise manager for up to 5 nodes. But if you want to have more nodes, then you will have. So the idea of ShielaDB manager is to, I think I will be able to share the links for ShielaDB manager, or anyone can Google it. It provides the ability to repair and make sure your data set is always sync and always up to date from all the replica. So in Cassandra world, the database administrator have to do repair. The idea of Sila Manager is to do this in automatically. So the user so the admin administration will not have to worry about this kind of stuff. And we encourage the people to use ShielaDB Enterprise Manager to do this kind of enterprise features that are provided by ShielaDB Manager. Otherwise, they have to do the repair on their own using the command lines, following the data stacks or Cassandra or ShielaDB. So actually, what I think about it, just you can see is a VIB, but ShielaDB open source is 100% similar to ShielaDB Enterprise. So you can run as many possible as. That's what I am certainly sure about.
All right, so let's say it's simply the business model of the company behind ShielaDB, where they tell you everything is open source. If you do it on your own using the command line, it's open to, let's say, infinity. Otherwise, if you want more user-friendly tools, you can manage up to 5 nodes, and the rest is, of course, if you need corporate or enterprise support, you will have to pay it's simply, let's say, a business model, but not a technological limitation of the technology behind it.
It makes sense, exactly. But it makes sense to have to only support 5 nodes from ShielaDB, because once you go beyond that, I think you will also get the benefit from ShielaDB managed service. That will be a huge advantage and cost efficient for most of our users who are going to run Chronica. Or if anyone also have the ability to do this, they just will be able to do the management on their own.
All right. Thank you very much for the answer so far. The next question is, what happens if an address has millions of new transactions within the same month? Do we have already an answer here?
Yeah, I already answered this in the hint. So that's what we already provide. That's why we have the hint, which is based on the year and months. And that's the whole point of Chronica, to support paging for this kind of operation and efficient, and make sure all the data is distributed evenly in all the Sila shares.
All right. I have a little echo, so.
Sorry. I
will. I don't know if it's.
Okay.
No worries, no worries. Then we have questions from Hoon. He's not here anymore. He will look at the answers in the recording. Can Chronicle be built as database agnostic? So could you change the database with other distributed databases? From what I understood, ShielaDB is an alternative to DynamoDB from Amazon, and so I can think that Chronicle can simply change, let's say, which database it wants to point to and go on AWS or Apache or.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to answer the question, but I suppose that as we build our tools to be as agnostic as possible, I can choose if I want to have DynamoDB instead of ShielaDB.
Yeah, actually, as you mentioned, like ScyllaDB, it already supports Dynamo DB API, so you can use the Dynamo. Right now, we only support the SQL API of ScyllaDB, which I think it's more interesting for me from Dynamo because it supports async stream support, and the storage app is oriented around SQL, and I am sure it will be more efficient than Dynamo. Using Dynamo API, but the user are free to design new application. Like they are free to use any database they want to implement a new application layer as their storage backend and use this in their like implementing the application layer and then use this in their workspace. So it's up to the user to decide which one. Right now we only provide ScyllaDB, which I think it's more than enough for most of the application because it's not just a key value store, it's not a document DB, it's a column family data store. That means you would be able to form any kind of complex database. You can use it as a multi-model database. You can use it as document, or you can use it as a key value or a graph store. So that's the whole idea of ScyllaDB. I think it's more than enough for 99% of the user. But if you want to use different database like Mongo or whatever you prefer, then feel free to just implement this kind of database, and we will be happy to integrate this in the Chronica.
All right. Then, all right. How would you define the difference between Chronicle and Ion by Olaf?
Yeah, interesting question. So yeah, Ion, it's mainly will act as a semi-permanode. I haven't dived more like in depth into Ion itself, but from what I understand, it will provide only the data which are most interested to the user itself. So it will provide the selective permanode feature, which we are also going to implement in Chronica. So if you notice, like we already have the switch to work on this, so it's already a feature request. But the main difference between Ion and Chronica, Ion will have other feature like time warping, or that you can jump in times. So we already provide this kind of this kind of ability in ScyllaDB and Chronica as well. But I am not sure like how to yet implement Olaf in our Chronicas. So we aim to eventually implement Ion inside Chronica. So this also is in the roadmap to integrate Ion inside Chronica as an application layer.
All right. Question: will there be selective permanode options with Chronicle? Maybe I missed the yeah, maybe you already said it, but
yeah.
Can I add something to this comparison?
Yes, absolutely, Olaf.
So the main difference is not particular the time warping, but it is that it does keep a provable path to your data. So it's not just keeping the data and keeping it alive. It is also keeping the paths provable towards current consensus. So that's a big difference. So it's basically creating a solid path to your data and keeping it that way. And it uses a time-based, also with time warps, indexing mechanism to basically within a second create paths over years if that's necessary in order to provide proof that your data was indeed part of the tangle, even if it was a few years ago.
Yeah, I definitely like this.
So it's more than just keeping the data.
I definitely like this approach. Like, and even like if we can like eventually, as we talk, to hopefully implement this Ion to integrate it inside the Chronica. using under the selective Permanode. So I hope like
we need to discuss that, I think, one day, because I think they do have very different purposes. As because you wouldn't be a complete Permanode if you would selectively delete data.
yes, but I hope to implement as an application, as a separate application layer to. So this we can discuss this in the future as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Olaf. Then from the question about the scalability and the storage.
Let us. I think we should answer this one because.
All right.
Yeah. So as like about the scalability of the storage, so that's why we are using the months, because even within a month, if you had millions of transactions, you have up to 256 megabytes of data per partition, which I think is more than enough. So I already calculated this. You can have almost around 100 millions of transactions per month. And then even if you have 100 million of transactions, when you send a hint query, your query will only return up to 255 hashes, and it will retain a paging states that you should use it in the next API call to retrieve from the next page, and so on. So if you had a lot of million of transactions within a given month, which I don't think it will happen, then you should like it already provides the ability to the paging support within the given month. And still, if you think this is not enough, you can modify the key space in Chronica data table to make it based on not year and month, instead make it based on maybe year and week. This will add an overhead, but it will make sure that the data is only bounded within a week. But I think months is more than enough for most use cases, because 255, it's more than enough to hold the relation. So in given partition, we are only holding the relation, which will be like a few like kilobytes. We already have compression inside ScyllaDB, so that will not be a problem at all. I think we can estimate how much it will hold later. But from like, I am sure like it will support 100 millions of transaction of rows per month, because it will not exceed the limit which is defined by Scylla partition.
All right, and of course, we will see in real life applications if how this goes, and we invite everyone to try it out and to let us know how that goes. So if anyone has other questions, you can unmute your microphone or write the questions in the chat. If there's anything we would like to add from the participants. All right, if there is nothing else, I would like to thank everyone for participating, for your interesting questions. Olaf, of course, thank you for your contribution to help us clear some parts about the differences here. Bing, Luai, thank you very much for your introduction to the Permanode and to the upcoming things for this experience team. So I think that we can end this presentation here. Luai, Bing, would you like to add something before we close?
For me, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.